She had been invisible for 2 years. Not weak, not broken, just unseen. In a fortress ruled by power, bloodlines, and fear, Lena Vale was nothing more than a shadow
cannot escape.
until the night
Help,
she was
someone!
dragged into the courtyard, and the
I have
Alpha
you now,
King
you're safe.
looked at her,
It hurts, but I'm here.
not with
Look at
pity,
me.
but
I won't leave
recognition.
you.
They said she was cursed. They said she would bring ruin to the pack. But when his eyes locked onto hers, the bond ignited. And in that single breath, the invisible girl became the most dangerous woman in the territory. This is the night everything changed. She was invisible. Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins. Her name was Lena, 17 years old, small-boned and quiet with dark circles from waking before dawn and hands roughened by years of stone floors and hauling wood. Her hair was always tied back beneath a plain cloth wrap. She walked close to walls. She kept her eyes down. She was an Omega. In Alpha King Daniel's fortress, that word meant one thing. You served, you stayed invisible, and you prayed nothing powerful ever looked your direction. Her mother had whispered the rules like a bedtime prayer every single night until she died. Move like smoke, smell like nothing. Never let them see you cry. So Lena crushed dried lavender into her skin each morning to mask her scent. She memorized which floorboards creaked. She knew every shadow and every corridor. She had mapped this fortress the way a mouse maps a house full of cats, not to explore it, but to survive it. For 2 years, the plan worked. She was useful, she was quiet, she was nothing. Then 3 strangers walked into the lower hall and changed everything. They didn't drag her away, they didn't growl warnings, they simply beat her until her ribs cracked, left her bleeding on cold stone and pressed their mouths close to her ear before walking calmly away. Tell your king we were here. Except Lena had no king, she thought. The great hall always felt bigger at night. During the day, the long wooden tables were packed, alphas and ranked wolves, all teeth and noise and the thick, sharp smell of dominance clinging to the air like grease. They laughed too loud, they threw bones at each other. The whole room vibrated with power that had nowhere to go. But at night, after the torches burned low and the last wolf stumbled to bed, the hall became something close to hers. Not truly hers, nothing here was truly hers, but for an hour, maybe 2, she could breathe without counting the seconds. She moved through the darkness on quiet feet, collecting iron tankards, scraping trencher boards clean with her knife. Her body had stopped registering the tiredness as suffering long ago. Now it was just the texture of being alive. Somewhere in the rafters, a small gray bird shifted, one of the ones that nested there regardless of how many times the guards tried to chase them out. Lena had always felt quiet fondness for those birds. They had figured out how to live inside a fortress full of predators without getting eaten. Smart, she thought. Very smart. She ran her finger along one of the deep claw marks carved into the tabletop. 100 years of wolves proving their strength against something that couldn't fight back. She understood the impulse. Not the strength part, the part about needing to leave a mark somewhere just to know you had existed at all. Her mother's voice drifted through her memory. The moment they truly see you, that is the moment you become a problem. Lena had built her whole life inside that one sentence. She picked up her bucket and turned for the door. That was when she heard them. 3 sets of feet, measured, deliberate, moving with the careful patience of wolves who had been waiting for exactly this, for the hall to empty and her to be alone. Her stomach dropped. She did not turn around. She walked faster, fixing her eyes on the servants' corridor at the far end, if she could just reach the shadows. Little Omega. The accent was wrong, not the fortress, something rougher, foreign. Lena stopped. She had learned long ago that running from an alpha was like waving a red cloth at a bull. It didn't stop anything, It just made everything faster. She turned. 3 of them, big, in traveling furs with pack markings she didn't recognize, not Daniel's black wolf crest, but something with teeth that curled upward mid-snarl. Their eyes were flat, not hungry in the way she usually feared, something colder than hunger, something that looked like a completed decision. "You work for Daniel," he said pleasantly. Then he hit her so hard the world went white.
She was invisible. Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins. She was invisible. Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins. She was invisible. Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins. She was invisible. Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins. She was invisible. Now she didn't remember falling. She remembered the cold stone against her cheek, the sound her ribs made, a dull crack that moved through her whole body like a wave, the copper taste flooding the back of her throat. They didn't shout. They spoke quietly between themselves while they worked, as if she were a task to be completed, not a person being taken apart. The last thing she heard before the darkness came was a voice pressed close to her ear. "Tell your king we were here." Footsteps, calm, walking away. Then silence. And in the very last second before she lost consciousness, one thought surfaced through the pain, small and sharp and terrible. They didn't ask who I was. They already knew. If you're already gripped, you're not alone. Drop a comment below. Did you see that ending coming? And if you want to know what happens when the king finds her on that floor, make sure you're subscribed. Next part is where everything changes. Lena woke up in pain. This was not unusual. She woke in pain most mornings. Sore muscles, bruised knees, the familiar ache of hands that never fully rested. But this pain had a shape. It lived inside her ribs like something with claws, and every breath pressed it deeper. She was still on the floor of the great hall. The torches had burned to almost nothing. Thin gray light pressed under the door. She had been lying here for hours. She pressed her palms flat and tried to push herself up. White-hot fire ripped across her left side. She pressed her forehead back to the stone and breathed through her teeth, slow and careful. "Get up," she told herself. "You have to get up. If someone finds you here." The great hall's main door opened. Lena knew that sound, the iron hinges that groaned differently from every other door in the building. She had memorized it because it meant she needed to be somewhere else immediately. She knew these footsteps too, quiet for something so large, controlled, the footsteps of something that had nothing left to prove to anyone. She closed her eyes. "Who is on my floor?" Not a question. Alpha King Daniel's voice landed flat and absolute, like a stone dropped into still water. The whole room seemed to pull itself upright around it. His steps crossed the room, slow, deliberate. She could feel him the way you feel a fire, not by touching it, but by the change in everything around you. He stopped beside her. Silence. He crouched down, and for the first time in 2 years, Alpha King Daniel looked directly at her face. She kept her eyes shut. "Open your eyes." She was invisible. "Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins," he said. Quiet, certain, the kind of voice that had never needed to be loud. She opened them. His eyes were exactly what the others described. Molten gold, pale amber at the edges, with a darkness at the center that swallowed light. Up close, they were almost impossible to hold. Not because they were cruel, because they were too much, too sharp, like something that could see beneath what was visible and had been doing it for years. He looked at her face, her ribs, the blood dried dark on the gray stone. Something moved behind those eyes, and it was not the look of a king surveying damage to his property. It was older than that, deeper. His hands, resting on his knees as he crouched,
closed slowly into fists, and then deliberately released. "How many?" he said. "3." Her voice came out torn and barely there. "Pack marking." "Snarling teeth, curled upward. I don't know the name." He looked at her for a moment that stretched too long for a man who had somewhere to be. Then he did something she had not prepared for. He reached down and picked her up. Not roughly, not carelessly. One arm beneath her shoulders, one beneath her knees, lifting her entirely off the floor before she could protest or disappear or do any of the things she was supposed to do. "I can walk," she said. It was a lie. They both knew it. He carried her out without answering. Behind them, she heard it, the sound of his wolves already moving through the lower corridors, voices low and fast, the fortress rearranging itself around a single unspoken command. She lay in his arms with cracked ribs and copper still on her tongue, and one thought turned over and over in her mind. He had looked at her face, and something in him had changed. She had spent 2 years making sure nobody ever looked at her face. She had been so careful, so endlessly, exhaustingly careful. And he had looked at her for less than 10 seconds, and something behind his eyes had locked into place like a door finally finding its frame. She needed to understand what he had recognized, because she had a feeling, cold and certain as the stone she had just been lying on, that whatever it was the reason those men had found her in the first place. By sunrise, she would learn that half the rival pack members found within the fortress grounds were dead.
She was invisible. Now 12 alphas are coming. Subscribe before the council begins.
She hadn't asked him to do that. He hadn't asked her permission. And that, somehow, frightened her more than the men who had broken her ribs. What did Daniel see in her face that nobody else ever noticed in 2 years? Comment your theory below and subscribe so you don't miss next part. Because what Marin tells her next changes absolutely everything. They took her upstairs, not to the lower hall healer, the rough-handed woman who patched servants with cheap herbs and sent them back to work inside the hour. No. 2 flights she had never been allowed on, through a corridor lined with wolf pelt tapestries, into a room that smelled of clean linen and something sharp and medicinal. The healer here was older, white-haired with careful eyes that moved quickly and touched nothing they hadn't decided to touch. Her name was Marin. "Set her down," Marin said, and Daniel did, lowering Lena onto a padded table with a care that seemed misplaced on a man his size. Lena stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out how she felt. She settled on terrified, which seemed honest. Marin's hands were cold and precise as they moved across her ribs. Lena breathed in small, controlled portions and made no sound. She had learned not to make sounds that drew attention. 2 cracked ribs, bruised kidney, cut above the eyebrow, possible concussion. A pause. "She's small." "I can see that," Daniel said, from near the door. "Has anyone noticed her before?" Marin asked. Too carefully. The question had edges. "No," Daniel said. Lena almost laughed. The sound that came out instead was quieter and sadder, and she pressed her teeth together to stop more of it escaping. "No, nobody noticed me. That was the entire point." Marin worked efficiently, explaining each step without being asked, a small, unexpected kindness. Lena kept waiting for the cost. In the fortress, everything had a cost. From the corridor outside, she heard it. 2 voices, low and fast. One was Kale, the oldest ranked wolf, a man who measured every word before using it. The other she didn't recognize. She caught 3 words through the door before they moved away. Before they come back. Her stomach tightened. Come back. Not if. Before. 3 days of rest, Marin said, wrapping Lena's ribs with practiced efficiency. No carrying, no hauling. "She stays on the upper floor," Daniel said, "until I decide otherwise." Both women looked at him. "I don't need," Lena started. "You were beaten on my floor by wolves who wanted me to know they could reach what was mine." The word dropped between them like something heavy. "Mine." "I'm not." "You're under my roof," he said, flat, absolute. "That makes you mine to protect, whether you want it or not." He turned and walked out. Marin was quiet for a moment. She smoothed the wrapping at Lena's side and did not look up. "What aren't you telling me?" Lena asked. Marin's hands paused. 1 second, then continued. "What makes you think I'm not telling you something? You asked if anyone had noticed me before. The way you asked it, it wasn't curiosity. You already knew the answer." Marin finally looked at her. Her old eyes were steady and measured, doing the same calculation Lena had seen Daniel do, weighing what she was ready for against what was true. "Rest," she said. "The answers will come when it's time." It was not a reassurance. It was a warning wearing the shape of one. And outside, in the corridor, the footsteps that had been there before were gone. Whatever Kale and the other wolf had been saying about before they come back, the conversation was over, which meant a decision had already been made. Lena lay back against the clean pillow and stared at the ceiling and understood with the cold clarity of someone who had spent 2 years learning to read rooms that she was not being protected because she was hurt. She was being protected because she was something. And whatever that something was, it was already known to people beyond these walls. The question that kept her awake long after Marin left was the one she hadn't yet asked out loud. Had her mother known too? The clues are already in this chapter. Did you catch them? Drop your theories in the comments and subscribe, because the next part is when Daniel finally sits down and looks her in the eye. And what he doesn't say is just as important as what he does. The upper floor room had a real bed with a dark wood frame and blankets thick enough to sink into. A window at eye level looked down into the inner courtyard. Lena sat and watched the world she had always moved through from the edges, now spread out below her like something she was finally allowed to see whole. She didn't trust it. Marin came twice with wrappings and a small jar of something that smelled like pine, moving with the efficiency of someone who had decided to do something before she changed her mind. "Your mother," Marin said, not looking up. Lena go very still. "Sarah." Marin's hands paused. 1 beat, then continued. "From Ashven." "Yes. She came here once, before you were born. She was young, and the old king, Daniel's father, they were acquainted." She chose that word carefully. It was doing a great deal of work. "Your mother left before Daniel was born. She never told anyone where she went." "She went to Ashven," Lena said slowly. "She had me. She raised me alone." "What are you saying, Marin?" Marin finally looked at her, old eyes steady and measured, doing the same calculation Lena had seen Daniel do, weighing what she was ready for against what was true. "Rest," she said. "The answers will come when it's time." It was not a reassurance. It was a warning wearing the shape of one. And outside, in the corridor, the footsteps that had been there before were gone. Whatever Kale and the other wolf had been saying about before they come back, the conversation was over, which meant a decision had already been made. Lena lay back against the clean pillow and stared at the ceiling and understood with the cold clarity of someone who had spent 2 years learning to read rooms that she was not being protected because she was hurt. She was being protected because she was something. And whatever that something was, it was already known to people beyond these walls. The question that kept her awake long after Marin left was the one she hadn't yet asked out loud. Had her mother known too? On the 3rd day, Marin told her the truth. Not all of it. Marin was too careful for all of it, but enough. She came in the early afternoon with wrappings and a small jar of something that smelled like pine, moving with the efficiency of someone who had decided to do something before she changed her mind. "Your mother," Marin said, not looking up. Lena go very still. "Sarah." Marin's hands paused. 1 beat, then continued. "From Ashven." "Yes. She came here once, before you were born. She was young, and the old king, Daniel's father, they were acquainted." She chose that word carefully. It was doing a great deal of work. "Your mother left before Daniel was born. She never told anyone where she went." "She went to Ashven," Lena said slowly. "She had me. She raised me alone." "What are you saying, Marin?" Marin finally looked at her, old eyes steady and measured, doing the same calculation Lena had seen Daniel do, weighing what she was ready for against what was true. "Rest," she said.
The answers will come when it's time. It was not a reassurance, it was a warning wearing the shape of one. And outside, in the corridor, the footsteps that had been there before were gone. Whatever Kale and the other wolf had been saying about before they come back, the conversation was over, which meant the decision had already been made. Lena lay back against the clean pillow and stared at the ceiling and understood with the cold clarity of someone who had spent 2 years learning to read rooms that she was not being protected because she was hurt. She was being protected because she was something. And whatever that something was, it was already known to people beyond these walls. The question that kept her awake long after Marin left was the one she hadn't yet asked out loud. Had her mother known too? On the 3rd day, Marin told her the truth. Not all of it. Marin was too careful for all of it, but enough. She came in the early afternoon with wrappings and a small jar of something that smelled like pine, moving with the efficiency of someone who had decided to do something before she changed her mind. "Your mother," Marin said, not looking up. Lena go very still. "Sarah." Marin's hands paused. 1 beat, then continued. "From Ashven." "Yes. She came here once, before you were born. She was young, and the old king, Daniel's father, they were acquainted." She chose that word carefully. It was doing a great deal of work. "Your mother left before Daniel was born. She never told anyone where she went." "She went to Ashven," Lena said slowly. "She had me. She raised me alone." "What are you saying, Marin?" Marin finally looked at her. Old eyes steady and measured, doing the same calculation Lena had seen Daniel do, weighing what she was ready for against what was true. "Rest," she said. "The answers will come when it's time." It was not a reassurance, it was a warning wearing the shape of one. And outside, in the corridor, the footsteps that had been there before were gone. Whatever Kale and the other wolf had been saying about before they come back, the conversation was over, which meant a decision had already been made. Lena lay back against the clean pillow and stared at the ceiling and understood with the cold clarity of someone who had spent 2 years learning to read rooms that she was not being protected because she was hurt. She was being protected because she was something. And whatever that something was, it was already known to people beyond these walls. The question that kept her awake long after Marin left was the one she hadn't yet asked out loud. Had her mother known too?
The room went perfectly quiet. Lena reached up and touched the back of her left shoulder through her shirt. The mark she had carried her entire life. The one her mother had told her was a scar from falling as a baby. She had believed it because she had wanted something ordinary. She had needed something ordinary. "No," she said. "Lena." "No." She stood too fast. Her ribs screamed. She didn't sit back down. "My mother hid me. She built my whole life around not being seen." "She was protecting you," Marin said, "because she understood what you were and what it would cost you the moment anyone found out. And now they know." The 3 wolves, the flat eyes, the way the largest one had looked at her shoulder. "This is a message for your king. They already knew before they touched me. That's why they did it, not to hurt me, to confirm I was real, to send him a warning. We know about your bond. We can reach her." She pressed her hand flat against the wall to steady herself. "Does he know? Did Daniel know about me?" Marin was a half-second too slow. "He's known since he was 16 that a bond match existed somewhere in the world," she said carefully. "He didn't know it was you, not until he looked at your face on that floor." "He recognized me," Lena said, "from a mark he'd never seen." "He recognized his bond," Marin said. "That isn't something you choose. It's older than choice." Lena turned toward the window. Below in the courtyard, Kale was breaking off a conversation and walking fast toward the eastern gate. Not casually, not as part of his routine, responding to something. She watched him and thought about the letter, the voices, before they come back. "How many packs know?" she asked. Marin was quiet. "Marin, how many?" Enough, the old woman said, that what happened to you in the lower hall will not be the last attempt. Tell me the rest, Lena said. All of it, right now. Marin looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time, she sat down on the edge of the bed and spoke to Lena the way one person speaks to another person, not a servant, not a problem to be managed. The bond, if completed, makes an alpha king nearly unbeatable in formal challenge. 3 rival packs have been waiting years for Daniel to show this kind of vulnerability. Any pack that can break the bond before it completes, or claim you first, gains enormous political power, not just over Daniel, over the entire Northern Territory. Lena looked at her. I'm not just a person to them. No, Marin said, you are a key. And there's a man, an alpha named Rowan, from the Veld pack in the far north, who has been looking for you specifically for 3 years. He found you first. He's the one who sent the 3 wolves, not to kill you, to make sure you were real. A pause. He now knows you are. The name landed like a stone in still water. Rowan. What does he want? Lena asked. He wants the bond broken, Marin said, and he believes, based on a different reading of the same prophecy, that the bond match is not a gift, that you are not a strength for Daniel. Her voice was very careful now. He believes you are a weakness that can be used to bring an unbeatable king to his knees. The courtyard below was full of movement, wolves clustering, conversations stopping when others approached. The fortress was not just preparing for something, it was already inside something. And Lena, in a clean room on the upper floor, was at the center of it all. She thought about her mother, about the years of rules in lavender and moving close to walls, about a woman who knew and had given her daughter hiding instead of truth. She understood it. She even forgave it. But she was done hiding. I need to talk to Daniel, she said. Marin nodded slowly. Yes, she said, you do. Rowan, remember that name. He's going to matter more than you think. Comment, what do you think his version of the prophecy says? And subscribe, because next part is when Lena finally walks up to Daniel in front of everyone and demands the truth, out loud, in the courtyard. The challenge came on a gray morning. Lena knew before Bryn found her. She felt it in the fortress the way you feel a storm before it arrives. Wolves moving faster, voices dropping, the great hall going quiet over breakfast in a way that prickled her back of the neck. Bryn appeared in the upper corridor, eyes wide, voice barely above a whisper. A formal challenge, the Ashfang pack, 3 days, full dominance, winner takes the territory. She swallowed. And in the challenge letter, they said the battle will be witnessed by the bond match. She looked at Lena with frightened eyes. Everyone's saying they mean you. Lena set down her cup. They weren't just challenging for territory. They were making her existence a matter of public record, forcing her into the open so that every pack would know she was real. If Daniel won, the bond would be undeniable. If he lost, she went to find him. He was in the war room with Kale, Rin, and Dova around a table covered in maps. All 4 looked up when she entered. The ranked wolves exchanged a look she caught and stored away. Leave us, Daniel said. They left. Dova paused at the door and looked at Lena directly, a flat, precise measuring look that gave nothing away, then walked out. You knew they'd do this, Lena said. I thought they might, he said. 3 packs. You told me 3 packs are watching. Ashfang fights. The other 2 wait to see if you're weakened. She moved to the table. And Rowan? Daniel's hand, resting on the map, was still. Rowan doesn't move yet. He's waiting to see whether Ashfang finishes this before he needs to. And their alpha, Kale, what is he? Intelligent, patient. He's been waiting years for the right window. He won't fight recklessly. Then you shouldn't either, Lena said. He looked at her. What do you need from me? She asked. Be there. Stand where they can see you, on my terms, not theirs. You want me visible on purpose? If they want to use your existence as a weapon, then your existence should be something I control the shape of. She breathed slowly. Her ribs still ached. Her hands were still the hands of someone who'd spent 2 years scrubbing stone. But she thought about the girl who brought water,
the one who moved close to walls, who had been slowly erased by her own invisibility. She thought about what it looked like from the outside. "I didn't tell you something," she said. He was very still. "When they hurt me, before the first hit, the largest one looked at my shoulder, directly, like he was checking for something." She held Daniel's gaze. "He wasn't just confirming I worked in your corstrin, he was confirming the mark." Something moved across Daniel's face, controlled, cold. "Rowan sent him the description," Daniel said quietly. "He knew about the mark before I did." "How?" she asked. "The prophecy isn't a secret. It's old pack record. Anyone with access to the right archives." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "Rowan has been preparing for this longer than I understood." The war room in the courtyard was very quiet. "He's not just trying to challenge you," she said slowly. "He's been building a case that the bond is a vulnerability, that claiming you makes you weak." She looked at the map. "And if Ashfang wins this challenge?" "It proves his argument," Daniel said, "and 2 more challenges follow immediately." "Then Ashfang can't win," she said. "No," he said. She looked at the map for a long moment, at the borders, at the territory that hundreds of wolves depended on, at the name Veld in the far northern corner, no challenge mark there yet, but present, watching. "What time?" she asked. "Dawn, 3 days." She nodded once. "I'll be there, eyes open, no cloth wrap." He looked at her for a moment with something in his face she didn't yet have a word for. "You don't have to," he started. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm choosing to." 3 days until the challenge, 2 more packs watching, and Rowan hasn't moved yet. Subscribe and comment. Do you think Daniel can win? Or is Kale about to prove Rowan's whole theory right?
The challenge happened at dawn. The outer courtyard was packed. The full pack gathered along the edges of wide-open ground, still dark and cold, the sky pushing from deep blue toward gray. Torches burned at the 4 corners. 200 wolves breathed frost into the morning air. Lena stood at the very front. Marin had found her a dark blue overdress, simple, clean, no pack marking. And Lena had put it on and braided her hair back and walked into that courtyard and let every eye find her. She stood completely still and let them look. It cost her. Every instinct she had trained for 2 years screamed to shrink, to edge toward the wall, to become useful and unnoticeable. She overruled it, 1 second at a time. Across the circle, Kale let his gaze settle on her. He was broad-shouldered and red-haired, with a calm about him that was more frightening than aggression. He studied her the way someone studies a map, for information, not emotion. "There she is," he said, carrying his voice across the space without raising it. 2 years in his fortress and nobody knew? He tilted his head, almost thoughtful. That's not loyalty. That's a king who wasn't paying attention to what he had. He looked at Daniel now, and his voice shifted, quieter, more dangerous. "The bond is only a strength if you can protect it. Let's find out if you can." Lena held his gaze and said nothing. At the edge of the crowd, she noticed 2 wolves in unfamiliar furs, standing still among the observers, taking careful note of everything, speaking to no one. She had not seen their pack marking before. She filed it away. Daniel stepped into the circle. 200 wolves straightened at once. The sound dropped. The torches seemed to burn hotter. He moved without armor, without his heavy furs, with that controlled quiet she had watched from a distance for 2 years. He looked at Kale, then, briefly, at Lena. His face said nothing, but his eyes said, "I see you," in a way that arrived in her chest before she could stop it. The fight began. Kale didn't open recklessly. He circled, reading, letting Daniel commit first. An intelligent move, waiting for information before investing anything. He was testing for patterns, and Lena could see it, and she suspected Daniel could too. The first exchange was fast, clean. Neither man gained ground. Cale feinted left and caught Daniel across the jaw with his elbow on the redirect, a move that needed planning, not instinct. Daniel's head snapped sideways. The pack made a sound. Lena did not. The second exchange was worse. Cale shifted, enormous red-pelted wolf form, crashing into Daniel with the full weight of a body that had prepared for exactly this fight. Daniel took the impact and went down on one knee. Everything in Lena went cold. He was up before she could fully process it, but slower. The cut at his shoulder, Marin's careful wrapping, had reopened, dark red spreading through the fabric. His eye was beginning to swell. Cale circled, unhurried. "You feel it," he said, conversational, as if they were not in a challenge circle with 200 people watching. "The bond, it's making you careful. You're thinking about her instead of me." He tilted his head. "That is exactly what I came here to prove." For 30 seconds, long, terrible seconds, Daniel absorbed rather than answered, and Lena understood with cold clarity that this could actually go wrong, that Cale had built his entire strategy around one true thing. Caring made you hesitate. She took one step forward. Cale's hand caught her arm, light, not restraining. "Not yet," he said quietly. "When?" she said. "You'll know," he said. She watched Daniel, bleeding, one eye swelling, being pressed backward by a wolf who had prepared for years for this exact fight, and she thought about what Marin had said. The bond makes him stronger, and what Rowan believed, it makes him weak. Maybe they were both right. Maybe it depended entirely on whether she let it paralyze her or not. She stepped forward again. "Lena," Cale started. "Not to stop it, just closer." She moved to the very edge of the circle, close enough that Daniel could see her without turning his head. She stood there, and she did not look afraid. She was afraid. Her heart was slamming against her still healing ribs, but she stood there with her chin level and her eyes steady, and she looked at him. "I'm here," her eyes said. "Stop hesitating." Something shifted in Daniel's face. The stillness at his center went deeper. Cale lunged. Daniel moved inside the strike instead of away from it, absorbing the cost on his forearm, and used the fraction of a second it bought to close the distance entirely. What happened next lasted 4 seconds. When it ended, Cale was on the ground, throat exposed, chest heaving. Submitted. The courtyard erupted, the deep collective release of 200 people who had been holding their breath. Lena did not move. Daniel turned, bleeding from his shoulder and jaw, and his gold eyes swept across the pack and found her. Not dramatically, the way a compass finds north, without effort, without choice. She looked back. She did not look away. 200 wolves saw it. The Alpha King and his bond match, both standing, both visible, both deliberate. And at the boundary of the clearing, the 2 wolves in unfamiliar furs turned and walked away, unhurried, purposeful, already carrying the news to someone who had been waiting for it. Lena watched them go and didn't pretend she hadn't. Rowan, she thought, he'll know by tonight. He won, but Rowan's messengers just left. What does that mean for what comes next? Comment your thoughts and subscribe, because next chapter is the conversation that changes everything between Lena and Daniel. This one will stay with you. That evening, the fortress settled into a new quiet. Not the quiet of fear, the settled quiet of something resolved, the kind of silence that comes after a long storm when the air is finally clean. Lena sat at the long table in the great hall with a warm cup in her hands, and nobody asked her to move. She heard his footsteps before he arrived. She was beginning to think she always would. Daniel sat down across from her. Marin had bandaged him, clean, tight, but the swelling around his eye had darkened, and the cut at his shoulder would leave a scar. He moved like someone in pain who'd decided not to mention it. I understood that completely. "You didn't hide," she said. "No." He nodded slowly. "I want to stay," she said. He looked at her. "Not because of the bond, not because I have nowhere else." She kept her voice steady. "I've been invisible for 2 years, and I thought it was safety. Maybe it was for a while.
But I don't want to be nothing anymore. I paused. I don't know how to be something. I don't know who I am outside of the rules I follow and the walls I keep between myself and everything else. But I want to find that out, here, without being rushed into whatever the bond means, without becoming something you own. He was quiet for a moment. My father kept my mother, he said. It was the first real thing from his own life he offered without her asking. His voice was even, but she heard everything underneath it. Show me, she said. Not today, not as a promise, just over time. Show me. Something in his face settled. Yes, he said. Not a proclamation, not a claim, just one word quietly between two people at an empty table by dying torchlight. She exhaled. Something she had been holding for longer than she could name finally loosened. But before the quiet could fully settle, the main door opened. Cale stood in the entrance. He held a folded letter, seal already broken, which meant he had read it. He waited until Daniel looked over. The two observers, from the challenge grounds, they left before the fight finished. He crossed the room and set the letter on the table. Daniel opened it. He read it. His expression didn't change, but the set of his jaw did, barely to see. He folded it. What does it say? Lena asked. He set it on the table between them. He's calling a council, Northern Territory, 7-pack alphas, in 30 days. He looked at her. The purpose of the council, according to this letter, is to determine whether the bond between an alpha king and their match constitutes a political threat to the stability of the Northern Territory. Lena stared at him. He's not challenging you, she said slowly. He's building a case to the other packs that you having me is dangerous to all of them. Yes, Daniel said. And if 7 alphas agree, it becomes a collective action, not one challenge, all of them with political backing at once. The candle between them burned very still. He's been thinking about this for years, she said. This was never about Ashfang. Ashfang was just the opening argument. Yes, Daniel said. She looked at the letter on the table, at the neat, careful handwriting, at the seal, a wolf's head in profile, eyes forward, utterly still. He's smart, she said. Yes, he is. She thought about what she had told Marin. I want to face it with my eyes open. She thought about the girl who brought water, moving close to walls, slowly disappearing. She thought about her mother's voice, move like smoke, smell like nothing. And she thought about who she was when she stopped doing that, when she stood at the edge of that challenge circle with her chin level and her eyes steady, and she looked at Daniel. I'm here, her eyes said. Stop hesitating. Something shifted in Daniel's face. The stillness at his center went deeper. Cale lunged. Daniel moved inside the strike instead of away from it, absorbing the cost on his forearm, and used the fraction of...
Spring came slowly. Lena noticed it in small ways first. The light in the courtyard shifting from gray to gold, frost disappearing from her window glass, the first green thing pushing up through the earth beside the old oak tree. Small, determined, entirely unbothered by the cold it had survived. She started keeping her window open. She was learning to take up space. It was slower and harder than she expected. Some mornings her first instinct was still to fold herself small, to map sounds, locate exits, determine where she shouldn't be. Habits written that deep don't know when they're no longer needed, but she was rewriting them, one morning at a time. She walked through the main corridor in daylight without needing a reason. She looked at people when they spoke to her. She answered questions with her own opinion rather than the safest possible deflection. She learned the ranked wolves' names, really learned them, not just enough to avoid them. Cale, oldest and quietest, who had fought beside Daniel's father and carried that history in the way he watched everything. Rin, terrifying at first glance, who loved long stories about things that happened before Lena was born. Dova, who had looked at Lena after the courtyard challenge and said simply, "You'll do." which Lena had decided to receive as the highest possible compliment. Bryn started walking with her, not sycophantically, with the careful, watchful attention of someone trying to understand something. One afternoon, Lena had stopped and said, "You can just walk with me if you want to." Bryn's face had moved through several emotions at once. "Okay," she said. After that, she did. And Lena noticed something. The way Bryn's shoulders changed over those weeks. Not dramatically, just slightly less folded, slightly more present. She was still learning, but she was learning. That's what it looks like, Lena thought, from the outside. That's what my mother saw me doing and thought it was safety, and didn't know it was slow erasure. She thought about her mother often. Not with anger, she had moved through that and come out the other side into something quieter. She understood. A woman who had loved her child so much, she had given her the only armor she knew, not realizing the armor was also a cage. She told Daniel about Ashfen one evening. The village, the fire, the years of moving and not stopping, arriving at 15 with nothing except her mother's voice still running in her head. He listened without interrupting. "She kept you safe," he said when she was done. "Yes," she said. She looked at her hands in her lap, still rough, still calloused, unchanged from the hands that had scrubbed floors for 2 years. She had stopped crushing lavender into them weeks ago. Not because she no longer needed to be careful. She still needed to be careful. The war room maps had more marks on them now than before the Ashfang challenge. Kale had added 2 new border flags in the past week alone, and 30 days was approaching fast, one morning at a time. She had stopped the lavender because she no longer needed to hide her own scent from herself. She looked up at Daniel. "I think she wanted me safe, but she was also afraid. And I don't want to live inside her fear." He looked at her steadily. "What do you want to live inside?" She thought about it carefully, about courtyard mornings, about Bryn walking beside her with slightly less folded shoulders, about a hand extended across the table and a man who had said yes without conditions. "This," she said, "whatever this is, even the complicated parts." He reached across the table and set his hand open-palmed on the wood, patient, steady. She set her hand in his. Again, easier this time. Outside, through the window she left open every morning, the spring light came in gold and warm. The fortress breathed. Below, in the courtyard, Bryn was walking her usual path, and for the first time, not pressing herself against the wall. And then Kale's voice from somewhere below, sharp and too fast, the particular tone he used when something was wrong. Lena looked out the window. A rider at the eastern gate, unfamiliar horse, long road dust on both of them. The pack marking on the rider's shoulder, she was learning to read them now, was not Ashfang, not any of the 3 packs from the challenge grounds. It was something new. She didn't recognize it, but she had started keeping a list. Kale reached the rider, took the message, broke the seal before he had taken 3 steps back from the gate, which meant it was urgent enough that waiting was not acceptable. He read it. He looked up, directly at Daniel, who had come to stand beside Lena from the window. His face, which almost never showed anything, showed something now. "What is it?" Daniel called down. Kale held up the letter. "The council." Rowan moved the date forward. A pause. "It's in 10 days, not 30, and it's not 7 alphas." He looked between them both. "It's 12. The spring air was warm through the open window. Daniel's hand, resting beside hers on the sill, was completely still. Lena looked at the rider below, at the unfamiliar pack marking, at Kale's face, which had the look of a man rapidly recalculating the weight of what he was holding. 12 alphas, 10 days, and Rowan somewhere in the far north watching all of this unfold with the patience of someone who had been planning it for years. She had told Daniel she wanted to be part of whatever came next. She meant it. She looked at him now, at the profile she had spent 2 years avoiding and was still learning to read up close. He was already thinking, already ahead of this moment, already calculating. "We need to know which 12, she said quietly. "Yes," he said. and we need to know who among them is already decided and who is still listening." He looked at her. "Because if any of them are still listening, then we can still change what they hear." He held her gaze for a moment. Something in his face shifted, not surprise exactly, more like recognition, the same look he had in the courtyard when she had told him to stop protecting her from information. "Yes," he said, "we can." Below, Kale was already moving, fast, purposeful, gathering the ranked wolves. The fortress was rearranging itself again, finding its footing for something new. Lena stood at the open window with the spring light on her face, and Daniel beside her, and 12 alphas converging on a council that had just become 10 days away, and she thought. She had spent 2 years learning to disappear. She was going to spend the rest of her life learning the opposite. And in a cold room in the far northern territory, a man named Rowan set down a letter and looked at the wolf across the table. The bond is confirmed, and she's not hiding anymore. The wolf across the table was quiet for a moment. "Is that a problem?" he asked. Rowan looked at the fire. "It changes things. A frightened Omega hiding in the walls was containable." He paused. An Omega who walked to the front of a challenge circle and held a king's nerve together. He let the sentence end without finishing it. The fire crackled. "That," Rowan said quietly, "is something else entirely." Book 1 complete, but Rowan just called her something else entirely. 12 alphas, 10 days, and Lena is just getting started. If this story gripped you, if you found yourself holding your breath during that fight or smiling when she extended her hand first, then you already know what to do. Subscribe so you're there when next story begins. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment from this story. And if you think someone else needs to meet Lena, share this with them. The council is coming, and this time, she won't be invisible.